The opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Eastlink Community TV, its sponsors, or partners.
So I'm Stephen Sekula. I'm the research group manager at Snow Lab, and we were chatting about this a little bit earlier up here on stage about the concept of speed running and what that means in the video game sense. And my job here is, so that the panelists don't have to do this, to speed run you through some of the basic concepts that you're going to need to launch into questions to our panelists later. Quantum comes from the Latin for the word for how much, and in the physics context, this generally refers to discussions about the smallest units of things that we can either perceive or conceive of. So it was introduced by Max Planck in 1900. It was one of the things that catapulted us into the revolution of quantum mechanics in the late 1800s and into the early 1900s. And the concept seems weird. But in fact, if you frame the universe as truly the result of a great quantum event, we're the weird things. We are the things that can localize one another. I know where I am. I know where my friend Ryan is. I know where the students are. I can tell you where they are and where they are not. That human concept ran into problems in the late 1800s and early 1900s as one tried to talk about what were then believed to be the fundamental building blocks of us, matter, the atom, and the things that make up the atom, like electrons. Electrons, like little planets, orbit around the outside of atoms. People tried to talk about them the way we talk about Mars and Venus and Jupiter, like things going around other things that are definitely somewhere and definitely not somewhere else. But they quickly ran into problems with that. And it was only when the idea that an electron could also be kind of like a wave, a thing that's a little bit over here and somewhat over there and more over there, but not in any one location, that catapulted us into the deep understanding of nature that we're still riding today and trying to figure out if it is the complete description of nature. So again, quantum concerns the behavior of the smallest things in the universe. So I think the next time that you're out by the water or on the water, look at waves on the surface of the water and ask yourself a simple question. Where is the wave? And you'll have a very hard time answering that question because there is no one answer to that question. There's some of the wave on the edge, a little bit more further out. Oh, but there are waves overlapping with each other. They run into each other's space. And actually, I can't tell the difference between where one wave ends and another wave begins. This is the language that is needed to actually make sense of the smallest things in the universe, particles, the subatomic realm, the realm that particle physicists operate in and think about. And because of this, because I can't tell you for sure where anything is, probability rules the outcome of questions. The input to the questions are governed by definite rules. I can write down the rules of quantum mechanics. It's very compact, elegant, and definitive. If you then ask me to predict the exact outcome of any single experiment, I will give you a puzzled look because there are many possible outcomes. They will happen with some probability. I can tell you the probabilities with great certainty. I just can't tell you what's going to happen this time. And this is a great illustration of this. Think about the simple yellow wooden pencil, which I grew up with, and maybe some people had mechanical pencils growing up here. They have pencil lead in them, which is really just carbon. It's graphite. And this is a very zoomed-in view of graphite using state-of-the-art imaging technology. And you look at this and think, gosh, I wish they'd spent more money on this state-of-the-art imaging technology, because this is a really fuzzy photograph of carbon atoms all stuck together inside of graphite. Actually, the technology is capable of seeing things far smaller than the atoms of carbon that make up graphite. The problem is you cannot definitively say with any certainty where the carbon atom and its electrons are at any given moment. They're a little bit over here and more over there and somewhat over there, and that fuzziness is part of nature. It rules nature. And it's how we have advanced technology and our understanding of the universe to where it is today. And we want to see that go further into the future. The other thing we're going to touch on tonight is really the broad topic is machine learning. Teaching machines to discern things, to think about things, to make decisions. Artificial intelligence is part of machine learning. It is an advanced decision-making process that once you train the tool is then capable of going and making decisions in a situation on its own. These are not advanced like biological brains. They are still fairly simple by comparison to biological brains. But in particle physics, we have been using artificial neural networks, little mini brains, for decades to try to tease simple answers out of complex situations. This is a beautiful image of a very complicated subatomic particle interaction in a state-of-the-art particle detector from about a decade ago. And physicists used images like this to train neural networks, which can do image recognition. They can tell you that's a cat, that's a dog, that's a hammer, that's a car. And they asked it, can I train that same thing to recognize that's an electron, that is a neutrino, that is something else? This has been pushed in the last decade especially to new and dizzying heights, both with software implementations of artificial mini brains, and also with hardware, chips, computer chips that are structured like little silicon-based neural systems. This is where things are really going. Can we make real-time decisions with hardware the way that, say, self-driving cars have to do that, for example, but do it with the subatomic realm? So what's the impact of all of this? We're going to explore that tonight, but certainly one of the impacts of artificial intelligence, quantum technology is security related. The passwords we have today will not be the passwords of tomorrow once we have fully functioning quantum computers, because they can break the security systems in principle of the modern day in seconds. Now, they will give us new security systems, presumably, but that's something we can explore and question and answer tonight. Quantum computers and artificial intelligence are also beginning to shape the way that we think about medicine. So, for example, drug design. It is far cheaper to try variations of a drug idea in a computer than to do that in a wet lab, which could take years to do it. However, the speed with which and the accuracy with which you can do that have been challenging. People have pushed this frontier, and it's very likely that quantum technology will push it even further into the next era. And how does this all relate to SNOLAB? We are home to some of the coldest places on the surface of the planet. Quantum technology thrives in cold environments because all the noise of everyday life is quieted out, all the heat of the everyday world is removed, and you can really focus on just the behavior of what the atoms themselves or the things that make up the atoms are doing. And that is how we achieve these really controlled situations where we can detect the subtlest glance of a subatomic particle interaction, or, because we'll be hosting quantum computing bits this fall, we can actually watch how those quantum computing bits fare when they're shielded by 2 kilometers of good old Canadian shield. So I'm going to hand things back over to Christina to get us started.
Thank you. So we have 3 wonderful panelists this evening. We have Dr. Nicola McConney, who's here from Queen Mary University of London in the UK. We have Kip Walsh, he's the Senior IT Officer here at SNOLAB. And we have Seb Jones, a Research Fellow at the University College in London in the UK as well. And I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourself a little bit more in detail. Nicola, would you like to start?
Sure. So I'm Nicola McConney. I'm a particle physicist, and I'm a lecturer. I guess that's the equivalent of an assistant professor over here. And one of the things that I really like doing in my job is building particle detectors and really developing new technology. And for me, the main goal for that is to understand like our fundamental universe better. But there's also a lot of applications across the world, and Stephen spoke to some of them already. But what's exciting about quantum technology for me is that it has the potential to make our science better and even more precise going forwards.
Seb?
Hi, I'm Seb Jones. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at University College London. I'm also a particle physicist, working in kind of a similar sort of area and working with experiments that involved with quantum technologies. And for me, I work more on the side of designing simulation tools to kind of look in an in-depth way at our experiment, trying to figure out the best design choices and evaluate what those will look like when we come to run our experiment. And that for me is really enjoyable, because in particle physics terms, I get to work on an experiment which is trying to answer the really big questions, but I also get to spend time playing with kind of small level technical challenges. And so I get this nice contrast of kind of solving problems at two levels, from the really profound uppermost questions down to the day-to-day technical challenges.
Thank you. Kip?
My name's Kip Gross. I'm one of the newest employees over at Snow Lab. So I took over the job as senior IT officer about 6 months ago. And imagine my blind luck that this experiment just started up, and I'm going to be one of the first local IT people that's going to touch a quantum computer. As IT officer at Snow Lab, I have a lot of other responsibilities that I would say are more mundane and boring compared to the exciting stuff we're about to discuss this evening. What I'm really excited about is getting my hands. I'm going to touch these things, and I will be working directly with the actual people that are working on them, and I've never felt better about my current career. I am the luckiest IT person in the world to be near this stuff. I've been doing IT for 30 years. I spent some time in Toronto, but general IT stuff, managing departments, wiring, cabling, making printers work, making the internet go faster, firewalls, all this stuff that is not pertinent to this evening's conversation. So I'm flattered to be here to work and talk about the things that I secretly watch on YouTube for the last 20 years, and I've never been able to apply it. Now's my time. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kip. All right, we'll get into the panel discussion now. The first question kind of touches on what you already touched on, but maybe each of you can take another round to tell us a little bit more about how your work relates to quantum information or quantum technology, maybe give a concrete example. I will start at the other end.
So how myself at Snow Lab, as the IT officer over there, will be touching quantum technology. Is one of the aspects of my job as the officer there is I have to support what I call the Linux Scientific Computing Group. My favorite group over at Snow Lab. Microsoft Windows, kind of boring to me. So in my efforts to support the Linux computing group, I am going to be working directly with the people that are on the panel, Stephen and all the fancy scientists at Snow Lab that are far smarter than I'll ever be. These folks, I'm going to be working to support them on their IT components. I'm going to be building them clusters, getting them the ability to grind math and do math problems as best as I can offer them with the resources I have available to me as the IT officer at Snow Lab. So in the near future, we're going to be looking at building our own internal Linux clusters to help speed up some of this math. I was having a discussion with one of my coworkers today, and we might have already found the dark matter. We just don't know it yet because we're sitting on volumes of data sets that we don't have to computationally crunch the math out behind it. So we'll talk about later. That's one of the things that's exciting for me about quantum computers is I'm looking at this right now from the classical computer perspective of building a Linux cluster with a lot of CPU cores and doing stuff because that's the best we have in 2024. This cutting edge stuff that we're about to discuss this evening, that is the future of vast number crunching. And once we get these things built and figure out a way to program them, we're going to laugh at the concept of a Linux super cluster. It's going to be small potatoes compared to what we're working on. So. at the end of the day, math is really what this quantum stuff is all about, and we're going to get real good real fast at making math faster. We're not very good at it in the classical computer age, so that's what I'm excited about this evening.
Yeah, so from my point of view, the exciting thing about the advance of these quantum technologies, it's directly related to the experimental work that kind of I do at the moment. Our experiment, we work with trying to measure very, very weak signals, and the promise of these quantum technologies is that this can really deliver a kind of step change in how well we can characterize some of these, characterize our data and really improve the sensitivity. And this hopefully is going to open up a whole new level of kind of, or hopefully open up some new answers in particle physics. So yeah, I mean, looking forward, it promises to have great impacts, and I'm really looking forward to it.
So, I can't really see you all, but hands up if you know what a neutrino is.
Okay, if you're a student at Snow Lab, put your hand up.
All right. No, that's okay. I wanted to read the room. Okay, so neutrinos are the most abundant massive particle in the universe, and there are billions of them passing through you every second. And in spite of this, we don't know very much about them at all. They're produced in radioactive decays that go on all around us, all the time, in the rock, in a banana, anytime there's a thing called beta decay. And neutrinos, we don't even know what their mass is. And that's pretty embarrassing given they're the most abundant particle. But still we can use them to learn about the universe because they're produced in supernovae. So if we can detect the neutrinos from that, then we can learn about supernovae. They're produced in the core of the Earth. And so they come out and we can measure them and learn about the core of the Earth that we have it gives us an extra handle on understanding what's going on all around us. And an experiment that both Seb and myself work on is called Quantum Technologies for Neutrino Mass. And the goal of that experiment is to try and measure the mass of the neutrino. And it's really difficult. It is really difficult, which is why it hasn't been done before. And so as Stephen was saying, like these things have to be very cold because thermal noise is so big compared to our signal that we're trying to measure that unless it's very cold, we don't see our signal because it's hidden amongst the noise of daily life. So we in our work we're using quantum devices that can help us unlock these tiny signals and measure in order to understand this fundamental part of the universe that we don't really know very much about. So I'm excited to share with you what a neutrino is. But I also wanted to mention, in terms of artificial intelligence, the nice blue picture that you saw, that's from an experiment that I worked on, that I work on. The thing about that experiment is that there is an awful lot of data. There's far too much data for a person to sit and look through. And that's what used to happen. We used to take data, well, this was way before my time, but there used to be people called scanners who sat and they looked and they were like, oh, that looks like an electron, that looks like, and they would be the first ones that would actually see the physics. But we have orders of magnitude, like hundreds of thousands of millions of events now, and we can't have people sitting and looking at them all. So we have to enlist the help of our computing computing friends and build algorithms to help us do that. So that's those are the two main ways that quantum technology kind of plays into the work that I'm doing.
Oh, it's my turn. How exciting. So I guess this question will be more for Nicola and Seb. Why are particle physicists specifically interested in quantum technology? You've touched on this a little bit, but what is it about this technology that drives things that we do in the modern world now?
So we need to, in order to unlock the mysteries of physics, we need to make things much, much more precise. And as a physicist, I'm excited about any technology that can help me do this. And I think that's really the main answer, is that, like, in particle physics, we want to make our instruments more precise, and this quantum technology can enable this, really. Yeah.
Right. So, do you want?
No, I think you basically hit the main points right there.
So I'll pitch the next question directly to you then. Seb, you can get started. So why are particle physicists interested in artificial intelligence? We touched on this a little bit already, but maybe you can elaborate. Thank you.
Yeah. So this was kind of touched on, but often for example, in particle physics, we are interested in looking at events that happen incredibly rarely, and we want to pick them out of an enormous background of things that we are not interested in at all. And we're talking, processes where we really only want to see, one event in, a billion or something is actually relevant to what we want to look at. And often it's either not feasible for people to look through all these events, or even if it was, the features that we're looking for, or we might be looking for some combination of features that are not readily apparent to a human, but for a computer that can view some multi-dimensional space with all these different features in it much more easily, the kind of signal events that we're looking for suddenly become much more obvious. And the second thing is, so we have a need for these machine learning techniques, these artificial intelligence techniques. And secondly, in particle physics, we also have the kind of ability to train our networks very precisely. We both produce these massive data sets from running our experiments, and we also have a great deal of simulation power, and simulations crucially that we really trust. And that allows us to build these simulated data sets that we believe capture the features of what we're trying to measure, and we are able to really use them to create these networks that we believe are incredibly accurate. So in essence, we both have a need in terms of trying to pick out kind of rare events or difficult to spot processes, and we also have the ability to utilize these machine learning techniques because of the field we work in, and the level to which we kind of understand a lot of our fundamental theories in particle physics.
Just briefly, to touch upon the pretend data set thing. So, like, we as particle physicists, often when we're trying to measure something, we make the best model of something as we can, and then we make a pretend detector, and we're like, okay, if we put a red ball in the machine, we'll get out 3 green balls, and then then what we do is we run our real data through the same chain and say, is our model correct or is our model not correct? and it takes up a lot of computational power, and artificial intelligence can be really helpful. Yeah.
All right, so I think the next question then is really intended for Kip, although we can open this up as needed, but we'll pitch this over to Kip. The quantum computer. So let's talk about quantum computers. So first of all, can you define what a quantum computer is? And then can you talk a little bit about some of what the barriers right now are to just mass adopting them? Why don't we all have them on our tabletops at home?
Yeah. I'm going to take a tip from your playbook. I also can barely see, but... I also can barely see, but show of hands of everybody in the room who thinks they know what a quantum computer is right now. Not a lot of hands. Perfect. Okay. Let me explain what a quantum computer is in the simplest terms I can put it. Long time ago, we used to make what we called analog computers. We built machines with gears that had a certain number of them, and we could do calculations like that. And we did that for a long time. In 1946, we invented this thing called the transistor. Before that, we had the tube. We built our first computer called ENIAC, and that was like the first classical computer. These tubes had two states, 0 or 1, on or off, and that's all you could do with them. We got a little smarter, went solid state. We made transistors, and since, how long has it been now? 70 years, this is the world that we've lived in. Every phone that you all have in your pocket right now, we've gotten so good at shrinking transistors down that we can put billions of them in a place the size of your fingernail. That's why all your cell phones are so good now. We've been rocking this technology for 80 years, but it is nearing the end of its ability to continually grow. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with this thing called Moore's Law, where they said we're going to double the size of transistors every year. We are reaching the limits of the physical realm of how small we can make these things, and they're pretty darn small at this point. We can do it a bit longer, but we're starting to hit the subatomic level, and we can't build transistors anymore. So maybe perfectly timed, a bunch of people 100 years ago started thinking about this quantum realm. And not very long ago, like literally not very long ago, 20 years ago, I won't go into the full details because they'll have to stop me. I could talk for 4 hours about this. There was a guy who thought up an algorithm, but it would be based on a quantum computing concept, and this was in 1994. His name escapes me at the moment, but he basically came up with a quantum algorithm to factor numbers. I'm not going to get into boring math with everybody, but factoring large numbers is a very difficult problem for classical computers, especially the larger they get. This guy invented a concept and came up with an algorithm. We had nothing to run it on. It was 1994. We had no technology that we could actually implement this crazy idea he had on, but we kept it. And a couple of years later, literally 1 year later, I believe, in 1995, and I wish I knew the names. I should have these off the top of my head. But in 1995, a person invented what we call the qubit. What a qubit is the next evolution of a transistor. So we have a transistor that can do 1 or 0. A qubit is a fancy thing that can have 3 states. It can be a 0, it can be a 1, or it could be both. It would be a long-winded conversation to explain the details of what do you mean by both, Kip. I'm just going to go with the word superposition and leave it at that. So picture a transistor in your mind, and it can have a 1 or a 0. Now you have a thing that can have 3 possible states. These things are just, they're just blocks that you would add to each other. So if you have 2 transistors, you have a 2-bit system. That'll give you 4 possible states. With quantum qubits, you've introduced this concept of a third position. So if you stitch two of these qubits together, you suddenly start getting exponential returns on the amount of math that these little things can do, because they have three possible states. And if you stitch together 12 of them, and we're not very advanced right now with quantum computers and how many qubits we have. I believe the most fancy system we have at this moment was built by IBM a few years ago, and it's like 1,000 qubits, I think. Can't remember the exact number. I think it's give or take. It might be 10,000 or 1,000, but it's not very many. And this is groundbreaking. We have never had this many qubits working together in conjunction to work on a math problem. So in essence, that's the building blocks of what a quantum computer is. It's based on this principle of you can stitch these things called qubits together that actually have three possible states. 3 is bigger than 2. We can do faster math. They also have another intriguing property, these qubits. They can work on problems, it's going to be difficult to explain, simultaneously. In a classical computer, when you ask it a math problem, there's only one definite answer. In the quantum computing realm, when we figure out how we can program these things, and I'll discuss that a little later, the challenge that we have with them is they have the ability to answer a single question 1,000 different ways at the same time. And this is difficult to explain, but the way that qubits store the information in this superposition, it actually has 17 answers to the same question at the same time. Where it gets tricky for us to program and make these things useful is, where do you know where to look? Which one of the 17,000 possible answers available to you is the actual correct one? This goes beyond my level of knowledge at this point. We're talking very advanced math that I will never be smart enough to learn. But in concept, what this feature of being able to stitch qubits together, and another property called entanglement that allows the spin of an electron to be either up or down. Entanglement is also another powerful tool that we're still struggling right now to figure out how to computationally leverage. But if a programmer had the ability to actually control the entanglement, let's say I've got a system with 1,000 qubits in it, and I knew a cool program that I'm working on that can control the entanglement in a certain way, that adds even another layer of computational power that we could leverage. Long story short, we've invented a new way to do math faster, and a lot more of it, ridiculous amounts of it. So that is what a quantum computer is. The follow-up part to your question was, what's the difficulty?
Yeah, what are the barriers to having that on your table? And maybe just a few less sentences. We do want to turn it over to the audience soon.
I'll keep it brief. We got 5 challenges. We have to keep them real cold. I'm just going to list them. I'm not going to get into any details. They have to be very cold. That's difficult. They require tremendous amounts of electricity. That is also difficult. We have no programming languages for them. Right now where we're at, and this is what SNOLAB is on the advent of, we're building hardware right now. One day someone's going to have to program these things. If anybody has a little bit of computer background, remember assembly language back in the 50s when there were no programming languages? You literally had to tell them exactly what to do. That's where we're at with quantum computers. That's going to be the biggest challenge, is programming them.
Anything to add, Nicola or Seb? All right. So your turn now. So we have Rachel up there from the Education and Outreach Group at SNOLAB, and she has a microphone. So if you have a question or a comment, please raise your arm, and she will come, wait for the microphone, and then we're happy to hear them.
So this is Hugh from Post Media. What does this mean for the average person? What is this going to do to our world? Will it shrink everything? Will everything work faster? Will it become cheaper?
Who wants to take that one? All right, Kip's cut off. Nicola? Yeah.
Sure. So I can talk from the perspective of like sensing things. So I'm a particle physicist. We measure radiation, basically. That's really useful in medicine. That's really useful in security. And if quantum technology can help us do that better, then that has the potential to like make our ability to measure radiation in medicine, like radiotherapy, for example, being able to measure anything more precisely is better for the patient. And in terms of like Homeland Security issues, if you're able to measure things, measure radiation more precisely, that's better, right? In terms of things being cheaper and how this will affect society, I think that we need to. Well, Kip touched upon, how much power consumption this takes. We need to be a responsible society, because whilst we can do a lot with quantum computing, we need to make sure that we are conscious of like the energy that this is using, and make sure that the trade-off is the right balance. And so I think in parallel to developing the quantum technology that needs the energy, we need to be thinking about how to make it sustainable.
So, yeah, I mean, I would just add to that, advocate for the kind of blue sky thinking element as well, in the, so we're both particle physicists, so we're interested in like in fundamental physics, so stuff that kind of necessarily at the moment we're trying to answer things that don't have a firm application as it stands beyond trying to understand our universe at the basic level, because the thing is we don't. But I would say there is actually value to society in trying to figure out these most fundamental rules that govern our world, and we never really know quite what that's going to unlock. Like, we don't know if what we're going to reach if, or we don't know how that's going to positively impact society just through having a more complete understanding of the universe around us. So there's also kind of more hand-wavy, but I still think important blue sky value to doing this fundamental physics work. We just don't know it yet.
One of the things about having this massive amount of computational power that humanity's never had before is it's a known fact in these circles that we can't even picture and imagine yet the possibilities that having this kind of math crunching power will open up for us. We're at the very early stages of just figuring out how to make the hardware go. I forgot to mention a couple things. Did you know we can't even keep them running for more than a second? When you turn a quantum computer on, you've got like less than a second to do what you want before it overheats and shuts down. And anybody familiar with BSOD, blue screen of death? Quantum computers blue screen of death in about a half a nanosecond after you turn them on. This is a challenge we're working on. They have to be very cold, and as soon as you start pumping electricity through them, they go up above like right up above 10 millikelvin, and then they decohere and they stop working because the states are all messed up. And anybody who knows anything about error correction in computer science, error correction is one of the biggest challenges with them. So my point is, we're at the very cutting edge of building the hardware. It's hard to speculate on what we're going to be able to do with them. We'd like to be able to predict weather, health sciences, a lot of work in biology right now. People are saying the reason we have such problems modeling viruses is because there's subatomic things going on in biology, and we only look at this stuff classically. So it could open up possibilities in that. I'm a big fan of Gene Roddenberry and the whole Star Trek team. I want a replicator, and this might get us there. It's just energy.
I mean, I'm excited about 3D printing, so let's go further. Okay. Other questions from the audience? Oh, we're really making Rachel run around the room. This is great. Excellent. All right, good. We're nothing if not a public service up here, Rachel.
A follow-up on the cost question. What is so expensive? Like, what about the qubit that's making it so expensive right now? Is it the material, or is it the time that it consumes to make one, or or something else?
Whoever wants.
Multifaceted question. The electricity costs, the specialization. The only reason I am going to get near one of these things is because I work at Snow Lab. It takes a massive team of people to organize an experiment like Susie to get this off the ground. This is not for a mom and pop shop kind of startup business. Honestly, if I'm being blunt, it's only available to nation states and academic institutions at this point, because you need to have so many people involved to get one of these projects off the ground. So that's why it's expensive. Keeping things cold is expensive. Keeping them in a shielded environment, and that's one of the things that makes Snow Lab unique around the world, is we have 2 kilometers of Canadian shield. It's not just heat from the thermal electricity you're putting into the thing. There's cosmic rays and neutrinos also coming down and interfering with these qubits. They're very sensitive, Nelson, very sensitive. So all this electronic shielding, the amount of people you need to keep it involved, the fact that, did I mention they don't even work for more than 1 second? It's a tall order financially, and that's why only academia is working on this stuff right now. There's no private company that can, we have SpaceX and Elon and all that. I haven't seen a private quantum computer startup just trying to do it. They would need billions of dollars, and I don't know, maybe somebody's working on it, but it's financially very expensive to work on quantum computers right now.
I just wanted to emphasize how cold we mean. Like, I don't have a good analogy for how cold 100 millikelvin actually is, but we're sitting around 300 Kelvin now. Colder than outer space. Right, it's colder, yeah. So we're sitting around 300 Kelvin now. Liquid nitrogen, which you might have seen, that's 87 Kelvin. Liquid helium is 4 Kelvin, so pretty cold, but 100 millikelvin is like nearly all the atoms have stopped vibrating, right? And that's why it's great. That's why it's a great environment. But it is a colossal pain to get there. And so you've got to have stages and stages and stages, keeping it colder and colder. And that takes a lot of expertise. Yeah.
Has anybody seen a picture of a quantum computer? When you Google quantum computer and you see it, the word chandelier comes up a lot. It looks like a chandelier. And when I first saw one years ago, I was like, that looks crazy. What is this thing? What I learned is it's just a big fridge in stages. So they start out kind of fat at the top, and it's like a layer cake. They get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then there's a pinpoint down at the bottom. At the bottom's where the qubits live, and that's the millikelvins. But the top half of what when you look at it later tonight and you go Google what a quantum computer looks like, it's an upside down layer cake, and the layers, it's just a big fridge. It's the stages of cooling. Won't get into how cryogenics works during this conversation, but there's different chemicals and gases involved at each level, and I believe liquid helium's as cold as we get on the human race right now. To the best of our knowledge, liquid helium is the coldest thing we have, so that's the bottom stage, and that's where we get literally 1 second of uptime from our quantum computer. So it's really just a big fridge. The quantum computer itself is just a little chip down at the bottom.
Yeah, so I think just to add some perspective on this, I mean, some of you may have had ice cream shipped to your house in bags that have dry ice in them. You can go out and buy dry ice. It's actually not that difficult. Many vendors exist, especially around here. You'll pay a lot for a brick of it. Liquid nitrogen is harder. Liquid helium is super difficult. So yeah, imagine stopping all atomic motion and being just 1/100th or 1,000th of a degree away from where all atomic motion stops. And what's cool about the helium thing is you actually have to use quantum mechanics to actually make the cooling happen lower than the temperature of helium itself. That's a quantum trick that wouldn't exist without quantum mechanics. So it's this quantum mechanics enabling quantum mechanics that's just it's quantum mechanics all the way down. Yeah, other questions? Yeah, great.
Hello, thank you very much for this. I'm Richard Denton. I'm a retired country doctor. But years ago, I talked with Ursula Franklin, and she was postulating that back in the 1900s, medicine had two ways to go, either chemistry or physics. And of course, we chose chemistry and have come out with drugs and all of that sort of thing. What would happen if medicine went more with physics?
Yeah.
I'd argue that we use a lot of physics, I mean, all the time in modern medicine, right? You think about radiotherapy, even most of the imaging, if you have an MRI, that is all, that's all come out of physics development, right? So this is something where, I mean, you have people who are medical physicists. It's really intertwined in modern medical care. So I'd say we're already there. It's, you know, we already use plenty of physics in our modern medical care.
I would think, though, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I was wondering if you could project where else it might go.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely people, even today, actually, we were in a seminar and someone mentioned that was discussing the fact that there are more advances to come with, I think the discussion was around using the same kind of technology that is used in particle physics detectors for a specialized type of imaging. So, for example, if you needed to do something, if you needed to do positron emission tomography, but you were someone who couldn't receive a large radiation dose for various reasons, and even there's still work going on these things to advance, more avenues to do with physics in medicine. So I think, yeah, there are people working on these novel detector technologies and how to integrate them.
I feel like, for me, certainly, it's really hard to draw a line between physics and chemistry and engineering, because there's loads of engineering in medicine too, like get a hip replacement, get a knee replacement, and like, I guess that's biological engineering somehow, but there's a lot of physics involved in all that. And I guess I have a question for you, because I don't really understand the starting point of where were we when we had to choose between chemistry and physics. Like, what status, could you describe like the state that we were in and when you say this bifurcation happened?
Well, that goes back to the early 1900s, and my understanding is that the chemistry aspect of the human body, understanding the chemistry of it, took precedent, and from that, of course, we've developed all kinds of drugs. And so, as a family physician, I do drugs. But from a physics point of view, to understand the human body in terms of how the cell works, from a physical point of view, how cells communicate with each other, not from a chemical point of view, but from a physical point of view, would be where I would be wondering where medicine might have gone if it had put more energy into the physics aspect of it.
One of the things that I used to do with my pre-medicine, pre-health, pre-dental students in introductory physics classes was, and I think this goes back to the point that was made earlier, like I don't know that there was really ever an era where physics and chemistry parted ways in medicine. I think chemistry dominated. It is hard to argue that the age of the drug was a long age. But in parallel with all that, like the discovery of X-rays, the first human hand X-ray occurred immediately thereafter, it was the spouse of the person who did the work. They imaged that the spouse's hand. You can see the wedding ring on the finger. The discovery of the positron, the first detection of antimatter, which came shortly after the prediction of the existence of antimatter, that positron is now used in something called a PET scan. So without giving anything away about medical history, I'm going to ask the question vaguely. How many people in the room have had or know somebody that has had a PET scan? That opens it up. Okay, so more hands go up than for the quantum computer. And so the PET scan is enabled by antimatter. It's enabled by detector technology that was developed decades ago for physics but was ported into medicine. And as Seb was saying earlier today, we heard a seminar today at Snow Lab about taking modern technology and porting that into the PET scan to make the PET scanners longer. So you have two choices. You can either use less radiation to do the same scan, or you can do the same scan in less time. And so for people that are very sensitive to radiation doses, where they really can't afford to have the dose of fluorine that they would need to get to do the PET scan, they could get a way lower dose, but they could be in a much bigger imaging chamber, and not a single incision gets made for this, right? So I don't know. I don't know that those ages ever totally parted ways, but drugs certainly dominated for a long time.
Yeah, also from my side, a few things to add. So I think it's fair to say that what we know about our brains is still pretty limited. And I think there are lots of opportunities where maybe physics can help. Because as you mentioned, we're talking about passing information. Maybe also in nerve medicine, pain medicine. I think there will be lots of opportunities moving forward where maybe physics can help out a little bit more. All right, we're down to the last little bit. So I would like to thank our panelists who all have learned the art of quantum counting to 2. So thank you very much. I would like to thank all of you for coming out and asking great questions. And I think the conversation will keep going. And I want to include thank you to all our sponsors again. So as I said, we partner with the City of Sudbury, Science North, and Dynamic Earth, and the SUSY umbrella, the Snow Lab Underground Science Institute. Yeah, thank you, everybody.